Here's something that can be confusing about the Old Testament, the day of the Lord. In Hebrew, Yom Yahweh. Why is it confusing? Because when we hear that through New Testament ears, we think of the final day of the Lord when Christ will return again. But multiple times in the Old Testament, you have the day of the Lord referred to as something happening in history, either something about to happen in the Old Testament or something that has happened. For instance, in the prophet Joel, you have the day of the Lord referred to about 5 different times. And this is mostly in reference to this locust plague that came upon Israel. On other occasions, you have the day of the Lord referred to as when these foreign powers, such as the Assyrians, will invade Israel and inflict God's punishment upon his people for their idolatry. And sometimes in the Old Testament, you'll have the day of the Lord referred to as the final day of judgment. So what's going on here? Well, throughout the Old Testament, these historic incidences that are referred to as the day of the Lord, think of them as kind of like a movie trailer. This very brief preview of the full movie which is to come. So these days of the Lord in the Old Testament, when there's some sort of judgment that happens, these are a preview of that final day of the Lord that is to come. And when that day comes, as the prophets envisioned it, as it's spoken of in the New Testament, this is the day of God's final victorious struggle on behalf of his people, when he's going to judge and destroy evil, vindicate his faithful people, and establish his unending and universal rule over his people. That is the day of the Lord.